Hey, thanks so much for being a part of our study today. We're in Deuteronomy chapter 5. We're looking at the Ten Commandments. The first of the Ten Commandments were given to maintain a love relationship with God. And the second of the Ten Commandments, second section, was to maintain a love relationship among other people. So we have seen the first ones that focus primarily on a relationship with the Father. Now we're going to look at how people are to relate to one another. So we're going to start with verse 16. Honor your father and your mother as the Lord your God commanded you, so that your days may be long and you may go well with you in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. Rudy, talk to us about honoring father and mother.
Well, in my life, my father was my best friend, so I tried to, it was easy for me to do what he said. Really thinking that he was probably always right was not the best idea, but it did teach me to be a better father.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it taught me the grace of my Heavenly Father.
Yeah.
And knowing and remembering that I was a child at one time, and the way that I interact with other children and my children helped me to be a better man, to be a better father. In some instances, I'm really not all that great at this. But you read a commentary every morning on
Right.
Deuteronomy.
Right.
What did...
His name is Peter Craigie, I think. I may be mispronouncing his name, but he's written a very good book. One of the things he talked about is that, and one of the big themes he believes in Deuteronomy is the teaching of the children. And so if, and it is true, if the children are the future, the next generation is the future of God's work, and if they are to know how to love God and love each other, then they have to be taught. But if they're going to be taught, they have to be receptive to the teaching. And so Craigie talks about how it's so important for children to honor their parents. In other words, to learn from what their parents have to say to them. I can't remember the number of times I had said, well, my dad used to say this, my dad used to say that. Same with you. Same with you. Well, so we were receptive to our parents. Well, if they're going to live long in the land, they need to be receptive to what principles the parents taught them, and then to live those out, because those are the principles that will maintain order. Coming down here today, Rudy, I was listening to a counselor on YouTube, and the counselor said he started counseling in 1979, and one of the things that he said is things have gotten worse with people's mental health. He says one of the reasons for the people's mental health declining, my words are not coming out well, is that the breakdown of the family. And he's seeing that in our generations. Well, some of the things we're seeing reflect the fact that parents maybe aren't the best parents they ought to be, but also children not respecting and honoring their parents and responding to them. Comment on that?
Well, I'm sure that every generation said the same thing. All the children are just going to hell.
Right.
And but they said that about us too.
Yes,
so,
they did.
So that's just part of remembering. And every time that any one of the leaders that wrote in the Bible asks us to remember, I always go back to the Last Supper and the institution of the bread and the cup, and Jesus said to do this in commemory.
Yes.
And you got to remember, this is Passover, and so the one thing that was big on their minds was Passover and what happened in the original Passover. So ultimately, the memory of that is the red letter day until he raises from the dead.
Right. Very nice. Let's move to the next one. The next commandment is, you shall not murder. And again, Craigie helped me on that, and I'm gonna turn to you. Craigie talked about how murder is a human being taking over the role of God in someone's life. And so if we murder someone, we are playing God, and we're doing what only God has, and that is the right of life and death. You have an additional thought about that as they're getting ready to enter the land, so why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it might seem strange that God says, do not murder, and then a few days after that, they're going in and annihilating everything that's alive in the land. Well, I think that this issue is eliminated by the cities of refuge, which we're going to read about a little further on in Deuteronomy. But the overview of the cities of refuge is that if somebody accidentally killed somebody, which is called manslaughter, murder is you becoming the judge and jury yourself, which belongs to only God. But if this were to happen, God made a way for that person to be protected. There were 3 cities of refuge set up on the west side of the Jordan, and there were Levitical cities, which kind of look like today's county seats. But then when they crossed over the Jordan and took possession of the land, he gave them 3 more cities of refuge, which makes 6. When David won the battle with the Jebusites and took Jerusalem, Jerusalem became the 7th city of refuge because the high priest lived there, which was ultimately the supreme court of the day. And so then we have 7. But the 8th city of refuge is the New Jerusalem, and which comes down from heaven. So when we think about this, we see the creation story and the recreation story in both of these writings, and in the procedures that went on in the cities of refuge. The cities of refuge, the person that accidentally had killed somebody, did manslaughter, he could go to one of those cities, and the head of the family of the person that died couldn't hurt him. If he left that city, they could.
Right.
The interesting thing is that another one of the statutes within the cities of refuge is that everybody that did manslaughter on the death of a high priest on the Day of Atonement could leave these cities of refuge with no consequences.
Right, right.
The death of Jesus, the real high priest, does that for us as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. There's so much to talk about here, but we're going to stop here today. God bless you. You have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow for more on the 10 Commandments.